What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than what we've been doing. We've been working on this delivery system that we've been making, and we added vehicles to it, and I think for now we're just gonna set that aside because I'm getting pretty bored with it. And I made this trash system that I'm going to show you how to do today. So this is another in-game job that you can have just anywhere in your game and have your players come up and pick the trash up and put it in the dumpster. The cool thing about this is in each one of these dumpsters there's no scripts, so everything is literally handled by this trash handler script and this local script right here. And all this local script does is just help the player find where the actual dumps are. So you can duplicate these and have literally as many as you want, and if we want to have 100 of them, we can. So what you can do with these parts is just like turn the transparency to 1 and then just set them on top of your trash cans, and as you can see, like, it'll just keep adding to it I got it set to 5 seconds right now, but we can change that to be every, like, I don't know, 30 seconds, every minute or so. And when we get the trash and we open it up, it'll tell you where to go. And so each player can only have one trash at a time. As you can see, whenever I try to get another one and I already have one, it'll just say no, one at a time. So whenever we go to dump it, boom, it all disappears and we get paid. So if you guys like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a like. That's the best way you can support what I'm doing. And without further ado, guys, let's hop into it. Alright guys, so now that we have our studio open, we can go ahead and start coding our trash system. So the first thing that we want to do is insert a part, and this part is going to act as the part that's going to go on top of the trash can. So we can name it whatever. I'm just going to name it trash. So inside of this, I'm going to go ahead and insert a proximity prompt, and we're going to insert a int value. And in this int value, we're just going to call it trash count. And so once we have that, we're going to go ahead and create a folder inside of the workspace, and we're going to rename it to trash. Now this is pretty important because we're going to want to find our trash part. So once we have that, what we're going to do is we can duplicate this pretty much as many times as we want. I'm just going to make a few just to kind of show you how easy it is. And boom. So now that we have that, we're pretty much done setting up the part that's going to give us the trash bag. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a server script, and we're going to want to set up a way for the parts to actually count. And so the way we're going to do that is with some local functions, and we're also going to do it with some for IV and pair loops. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up a local function, and I'm just going to call this count. And so what we want this function to do is loop through all of our trash values and figure out where the actual trash count value is, and then every so often we want it to add a value, and then we also want it to change the proximity prompt text so that it's displayed to the player how many trash bags are in there. So what I'm going to do is set up some parameters up here, and I'm going to say local trash parts are equal to game.workspace.trash, and then we're going to say get children. Alright, and so what that's going to do is it's going to loop through this folder here, and it's going to get all these parts. And the reason we want to do that is because we're going to have to loop through it and figure out where our values are at. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say while true do, because this is going to be running constantly. We want it going all the time, because it's going to be what is counting up in our trash values. So we're going to put a wait here. So this is where you want to add your wait time, and you can put a parameter for it. So we can say local time, or I don't know, local trash time is equal to, and then you can just put a number. So we're going to just say 5, and then in this wait we're just going to say trash time. So if you want to change it, it's at the top waiting for you. So once we do that, we want to loop through all of the trash parts in the folder. And so how we're going to do that is we're going to say for I comma trash in pairs, and in the parentheses here we're going to say trash parts. And so it's going to loop through all of the children of the of this trash folder here, and it's going to return to us how many is in it, and it's going to allow us through trash to look at the descendants of each individual one. So the next thing that we were going to want to do is we're going to want to check to see if what information has been gathered is exactly what we want it to be. So we're going to say if trash, and then we're going to say is, and then we're going to say part, then, and then here we're going to go ahead and set up the values to how we're actually going to keep track of how many trash is in each trash can. So we're going to say local trash count is equal to trash count. Make sure that's what we named it. Yep. And then after we do that, we can set up another parameter for the proximity prompt. And so what I'm going to call that is just trash prompt. We're going to keep it easy, or trash procs. And then we'll say trash dot proximity prompt. And so what that's going to do is it's going to loop through all of these and grab the proximity prompt and the value of each of them. And then what we want to do is we want to add the trash count dot value is equal to trash count dot value plus 1. And so we want to make sure that that value is going to be added to by 1, and then we want to make sure that that's displayed to the proximity prompt that's inside of the trash. So how we're going to do that is say trash prompt or trash procs dot action text is equal to trash count dot value. And so every time that this is updated, it's going to add, and then it's going to change that proximity prompt to the correct values. And so we actually want to change this to a string, and we want to say trash count dot value. So I've had issues before where if we don't change that number into a string, that it doesn't display on the action text properly. I don't think it'll be an issue, but just in case, I always do a toString on numbers, or on numbers. So now that we have that, the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to loop through all of the trash parts and figure out when the proximity prompt is triggered, and then if it, like, we want to check to see if the player has the tool in his backpack. So we got a lot of stuff going on in this next one. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is come over here to server storage, and we're going to create a tool quickly, and we're just going to call it trash. And then inside of this tool, I want to put an int value, and I want to call it price. Now if you go to the toolbox and you look up trash tool, there's a free trash bag tool that you can use, and so I'm pretty much just gonna take the model from that and then put it inside of mine. So I'm gonna, because I don't have a trash bag model at the moment. So once we do that, we can go ahead and start coding our function for when the player is going to receive the tool. So the first thing we're going to do is do for I comma trash in pairs, and then in the parentheses we're going to say trash parts once again. So a lot of what we're doing is going to be kind of similar to what we just did, but we're going to be doing different things. So we're going to say if trash is a tool, no, not is a tool, is a part, then, and then here we want to get some parameters. So the first parameter that I'm going to want to get is trash part, and then we're also going to want to get trash procs once again. So I mean, not trash part, we want trash count. So we're going to say local trash count is equal to trash dot trash count, and we're going to say local trash procs is equal to trash dot procs mini prompt. And then this is where we're going to be able to actually figure out if the player is triggering the proximity prompt. So, and we can also change and like set the action text here initially for the game. So what we want to do is just say trash procs dot trash count, or trash procs dot action text is equal to trash count dot value. And if we don't do this, whenever we spawn in the game, the trash prompt is just going to say interact until this while true do loop runs through, and then it'll change here, right? But it won't change until then. So if we put it here, this is not a local function, so this is going to run immediately, and so it'll automatically set the text to what we need it to set to. And so once we have that, we can go ahead and set up our triggered function. So we can say trash procs dot triggered connect, and then we'll say function, and in the parentheses we always want to say player. It's pretty important. So once we have that, this is where we can check to see if the player has the tool already or not, and we also want to go ahead and set up our tool in general. So it's going to be equal to game.replicated storage find first child trash, not replicated storage, server storage. And then once we have that, we can say if player.backpack or find first child trash, and I'm gonna just copy this because that's a pain in the ass to write every time. So we're gonna say or player.character find first child trash, and then we're gonna print a little statement saying nope, because we don't want the player to have more than one tool at a time. But if they don't, then we'll say local new tool is equal to tool clone, and we'll say new tool dot price, and this is where we want to set the price. So we're going to say math dot random, and then in here we're going to say like 200 to 400. So the player would be paid anywhere from $200 to $400 whenever they drop this off. And then from there we can set the parent of the new tool to the player's backpack. And once we have that, we also want to set the trash count to negative, like to subtract by 1, and then we also want to update the proximity prompt action text. And so how we do that is how we did it before. We're just going to say trash count dot value is equal to trash count dot value minus 1, and then we're going to say trash prox dot action text is equal to trash count dot value. And so once we have that, that should pretty much wrap up what we need to do for our first function. So the only thing we really need to do now is to make sure that the while true do loop is running and it doesn't affect the rest of the script, because what we don't want it to do is just to get caught here, because if we just said count, like we just ran our count function, it would just get stuck in that while true do loop, and it would never actually move and check to see when a player triggers a proximity prompt. So what we want to do is use something called a quarantine wrap. I don't know if that's how you exactly pronounce it. That's how I pronounce it. And so how we do that is we say quarantine.wrap, and then once we do that, we can just put in our count function, and we want we don't want it to be like that, but we want parentheses on the outside as well. And so when we do this, this should make all of our tools count up, and it should set everything properly to the proximity prompt. So we can check to see if it did, and it is. So you can see every 5 seconds it should go up. Boom, it goes up. And when I do it, I get an error, so we know the proximity prompt is working. So that's how you can have a while true do loop running at the same time you have another PC or script listening for an action. So now we want to fix this price here, because apparently in the new tool price doesn't exist. So price is not a valid member of trash, and I don't know why, because it should be PRICE. See, I don't get it, because it should say, we'll say find first child, and then we'll say price, because that should work. Dot value. Oh, you know what? That might have been it, because I didn't have the value. Yeah, so that, I mean, I don't know, because it's throwing a weird error, but it would make sense to me that it would throw an error because I didn't get the value of it. I'm not entirely sure, so we're just gonna add value and see if that fixes it. It does. So we want to add a check for that, because we don't want it to be -1. But as you can see, it does give us the trash value, and then we can check to see how much we're going to get paid for it if we go to our backpack. So 323. So now that we have that, the only thing left to do is we want to go ahead and add some dumpsters. Now I got these dumpsters from the toolbox. They're free models, but I'm just gonna paste in the ones from the previous game, so you can just find these. If you look up dumpster in the toolbox, you'll find it. It's not hard to find. So we're gonna create another folder, and I'm gonna call it dumpsters, and that's where we're gonna put this dumpster part at. So I already have a proximity prompt and a billboard GUI inside of this one, but I'm just gonna redo the process so you can see how to do it. So we're gonna insert a proximity prompt, and we're gonna insert a billboard GUI, and inside that billboard GUI we're gonna insert a text label. And then if you keep the billboard GUI highlighted and then you go into properties, you'll see this extends offset, and you just want to raise this up to like 1 or 2. I'm going to keep mine to 2, and then we can go ahead and stylize our label. So I always make the background transparency 1, and then we're going to scroll down. We're going to make the text color red, and then I'm going to make the text, I'm going to say deliver here, or we'll say dump trash here, and then we're going to say text scaled, and then we want to change the font to something cool. So I always do luckiest guy. And so now you can see it says dump trash here, and it's super easy to set up. So now we can have literally as many as these as we want. It's the same thing as our pickup tool, so I can like duplicate these 3 or 4 times and have them there. But what we want to do is make sure these billboard GUIs are not enabled, because we're going to enable them with our local scripts that we're about to make. And then we also want to add to our server script, which what we're going to do first, to include these dumpsters. So what we want the dumpsters to do is when the player presses it, we want the dumpster to destroy the player's tool, and then we also want it to pay the player whatever the price value is. So how we're going to do that is pretty similar to how exactly we're doing the trash right now. But we're going to say at the top, we're going to say local dumpsters is equal to game.workspace.dumpsters get children, and then we're going to say for I comma dumpster in pairs, and then we're going to say dumpsters do, and then I'm going to go ahead and check to see if the dumpster is apart. And I always do this just to make sure that we're not like including a script. Like I don't want to accidentally break it somehow. I don't know if that would break it, but we just want to make sure that we're getting parts. And then once we have that, we can go ahead and set up our dumpster proximity prompt. So local dump prox is equal to dumpster. No, we don't want to do dumpsters here. We want to do dumpster. So dumpster dot proximity prompt, proximity prompt, and then once we do that, we can set the action text to just something simple. It doesn't really matter. We can just say dump here. And then once we have that, we can check to see when the player is triggering that proximity prompt. So we're going to say dump prox dot triggered connect, and then function player, and this one's going to be a little bit different. So we want to see if the player has it in his backpack, or if the player has it in his character as well. And if he does, then we want to pay him instead of not pay him. So how we're going to do that is pretty simple. We want to do it separately if it's in the player's backpack, because if it's in the player's character, that means the player is holding the trash bag in his hand, like the tool is equipped. And so when the tool is equipped, we have our deliver here billboard GUI will be enabled. And so when this script destroys the tool, it's not going to set that billboard GUI to disabled. We have to do that with the client. So we have to fire a client event if the player is holding the tool. So what we're gonna do is say backpack is equal to player dot backpack, and then we'll say local character is equal to player dot character. And then what we want to do is say if backpack find first child, and then we'll say trash. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna copy that because that's a pain to write every time. Then if it's here, what we want to do is we want to figure out the what the tool is. So we're going to say local trash tool is equal to backpack find first child trash. And then if it's there, we want to say local price is equal to trash tool dot price. And then once we have that, we can also get the player's money stat. And so how we want to do that is say local money stat is equal to player stats dot cash. Now we set this up in our player value script, and again we did this in a separate video. So if you don't know how to do this, go watch that video. It's called How to Make a Saving Bank System, and you can get all that information there. But now we can call our money stat from any script we want because we have it stored in the player in a folder called player stats. So once we have that, we can go ahead and move on to adding our pay function and get rid of the tool. So if it's in the player's backpack, it's pretty simple. We just want to pay him. So we want to say moneystat.value is equal to moneystat.value plus price.value. And so that'll give the player the amount that the tool is worth. And then what we want to do is destroy the tool. So we'll say trash tool, and then we'll say destroy. And so that'll get rid of our trash tool. Once we have that, we can do an else if statement, and we can check the character and see if the character has the tool in his hand. And if he does, then we want to do something a little bit different. We pretty much want to do all of the same parameters, and we still want to pay the player, and we also want to destroy. So almost everything is the same, except we want to fire a remote event that will reset the billboard GUI in the player's client. So I think that's cool once we do that. So now what we want to do is create a remote event real quick in the replicated storage, and we're just going to call this trash reset. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and fire that event before we destroy the tool. So we want to say game.replicatedStorage trash reset fire client, and then we want to say player, and then we can say trash tool destroy. And so what that'll do is that'll allow us to what this is going to allow us to do is we're going to fire this trash reset remote event, and whenever we receive that in the client, we're going to reset the billboard GUI to be disabled. And the reason we're doing this again is because if it's in the character, that means it's equipped, and if we destroy it before we reset it in the client, then it will not reset and it'll stay on the player screen, which is super annoying and not what we want. So I think we can move on to coding our tool now. So the tool is pretty simple. All we want to do is when the tool is equipped, we just want to make it so that the dump here billboard GUI is set to enabled, and that's pretty simple. So in our local script, we're just going to start off by writing a few parameters. The first one, in local scripts, we always want to write the player parameter, and that is going to be game.players.localPlayer. And you can only call that in a local script. I remind you every single time because it can get pretty confusing. So the next three parameters we want to set up is we want to get the trash parts again, except this time we want to get them in the dumpster folder instead of the trash folder, and then we want to get the tool and the reset event. So we're going to say local dumpsters is equal to game.workspace.dumpsters get children, and then we want to say local event is equal to game.replicatedStorage.event trash reset. And then the last parameter we want to set up is our tool. So our tool is script.parent. So once we have that, we can go ahead and set up our local function, and our local function is going to be actually super simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to say local function, and I'm just going to call this open tool. And what we want to happen when the tool is equipped is we want this script to go into the dumpster folder, get all the dumpsters, and then make all these billboard GUIs show to the player. And so when that happens, the way we can make that happen actually is by another for I comma dumpsters in pairs. So dumpster in pairs, and then we'll say dumpsters. So I want to put an S here on this dumpsters because we want to make these different. So this is the parameter you get to name. You can name this whatever you want, but this is the one that's important because we want it to get children. So now what we're going to do, like always, is we're going to check to see if dumpster is a part. And then if it is a part, then we can go ahead and get the billboard GUI and set it to enable it as true. So we'll say dumpster.billboard GUI dot enabled is equal to true. And so now that we have that, we're done with that local function, and we can create another local function. And I'm going to call this close tool. And so once we have that, we can pretty much just copy this function, this for IV in pairs loop that we just wrote, and then all we have to do is change this true to a false. And so once we have that, we can go ahead and connect all of the function, like all of we can connect everything together. So we want, when the tool is equipped, we want the billboard GUI to be enabled. So the way we do that is we say tool.equipped connect, and then we can say open tool, and then the next thing we want to do is if the tool is unequipped, we want to set it to close. So we'll say tool.unequipped connect, and then we'll say close tool, and then we set up this client event here, trash reset, and this is where we want to call it. So event on client event connect, and then in here we're going to say close tool as well. So once we have that, everything should be set up and we should be ready to test. This is where we're going to see if there's any errors, so keep watching just in case we have to fix something. So let's see if it counts up. It's not counting, which I don't know what I set it to. Let's see. So I set it to 5 up there and it was working, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just get rid of this trash time and we're just gonna set it to 5. Let's keep it easy, and just make sure that we didn't mess up on anything here. So I'm gonna review. Looks like we did everything correctly. There. So I think we just forgot the other parentheses on the outside of that Cortine wrap. So make sure you have both of those. There we go. Yeah, that was the problem. So as you can see, they're counting up every 5 seconds. And we can take it and it'll say deliver trash here. If we remove it, it'll remove. And then we can go up. Let's watch our money. And we got paid. So whenever we get paid, it'll go away. The deliver here GUIs will go away. So that pretty much wraps up our video, guys. I do want to show you that you can just like duplicate these as many times as you want, because there's no scripts in it. There's nothing you have to change. All of this is managed literally by 2 scripts, and so that's the beauty about this, is that it's not like a crazy project. You can do cool stuff with, you know, a minimal amount of code, and this right here is literally maybe 120 lines, not even that. It's literally 80 lines of 90 lines of code, you know. So this is, you know, the epitome of beginner content. So if you guys like this video, make sure to subscribe. That's the best way you can help me out, guys. And if you want to see more content like this, or you want a tutorial on something that you haven't seen a lot of, please leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. But without further ado, guys, I'm gonna let you guys go. I hope everybody has a good day, and yeah, I'll be seeing you. Bye bye.